channel. My name is Trevor and this is Andrew from Quality Connect. He's the founder, and today we are going to be talking about how does weather affect the building process. Jocko Willink, retired Silver Star Navy SEAL officer and founder of Echelon Front Consulting and author of Extreme Ownership, he says, don't expect to be motivated every day to get out there and make things happen. You won't be. Don't count on motivation, count on discipline. Now, here's a fun fact that I found on the interweb. The Great Pyramid of Giza was the tallest building in the world for over 3,800 years.
That is great to know.
That's a long time. If you're ever on Jeopardy, now you know.
Right, I will. That will help get me out of the negatives if I'm ever on Jeopardy. It's good to know.
All right, perfect. So, Andrew, you've been a builder for a long time. Maybe tell us a little bit about weather and how it's been affecting you over the last several years in building.
Well, I think the quote above, with don't count on being motivated, definitely plays to the weather, because there are definitely days where it's hard to, it's minus 25 outside. It's hard to motivate yourself to go out and do something, and it's hard to motivate others. Same thing in the rain. The job needs to get done. The house needs to get built, and we're not going to get nice plus 18-degree days straight through the year. So, if you expect to be employed throughout your career, you have to be able to work in those conditions, because nobody hires a fair weather anything in the trade. They want someone reliable. They don't want to switch trades depending on the weather. So how does it affect the building process? Well, it can, certain things you can work in the rain. Certain trades can't. If you're framing outside and you're working with electrical, it's not a lot of fun to work in the rain. certain tools don't work in the cold. Pouring concrete in minus 30. No amount of calcium in it, no amount of heating it and tarping it is going to get you a good quality pour. You're just risking it. So.
But a lot of people still try.
A lot of people still try. A lot of people tear them up at the end, and it's hard on equipment. Excavators don't want to work in minus 30. It's hard on their equipment. You're paying them a lot of money to dig through that frost layer to get down there, and once you get down there and you expose non-frozen ground, which is what you need to pour concrete on. You can't pour concrete on frozen ground. You got to work really fast, because that ground's going to freeze really fast at minus 30. So. It's definitely a fight in the elements.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, thinking back to my construction days, it didn't matter. If it's minus 25, you still had to drill the holes and pull the wire. And working with Lumix and with Category 5 cable or Category 6 cable, the jacket would just fall off because it's so cold. So sometimes there's certain things you cannot do when it's that cold, but other times, you just gotta suck it up and do what you can do.
Yeah.
So for you, being in the framing, home building part of the construction trades, what's worse for you? Rain, snow, cold, or heat?
I'd say rain.
Yeah.
You can always, if it's cold, you can always add more layers. There's usually stuff you can do. If it's hard on the equipment, certain things you can run inside, certain things you can build hot boxes around, you can tarp them, you can keep them a little bit warmer. With the rain and electrical, you just can't do it. If you're on a roof, the rain makes it slick. You can't stand on wet OSB or wet plywood. It's just not safe, and that'll slow things down. The heat is hard for heat stroke, but other than that, regular water breaks and keeping a hard hat with a good visor on it will keep the heat off. So that's not the worst. I don't mind working in the snow. You can sweep the snow off. It's usually not minus 30 when it's snowing. It's usually minus 15 or a little bit warmer. So as nice as that sounds, you can always work in the snow. Every once in a while you gotta shovel out certain sections to do work, and it's a little bit slower, but it's definitely workable. As for the house itself, cold and rain are equally bad. Cold is bad when it comes to your concrete, but for the rest of it, it's fine. Framing, everything like that is fine in the cold. Rain is bad for your house because you're working with lumber. It absorbs the water. You know, if you seal off your house before it's had a chance to dry, you're going to have mold issues, expansion, contraction. When lumber dries, it shrinks. So if you're putting in lumber that is dripping wet and you insulate it and drywall it, when it dries, you're going to have some drywall cracks. So
yeah, there's definitely issues. I would have to agree with you. I think rain is the worst because, you know, the site itself is
it's
like trying to walk through, you know, gumbo. It's awful, and it gets on all of your clothing. It gets tracks through the building, gets on all your tools. I mean, there's no getting away from it. And then one year we were building apartment buildings. There was a few different sites we were working on, and it had rained and rained and rained and rained for a few weeks solid. And we had nothing but mold issues in the crawl spaces, mold issues in the attics, like everywhere throughout the building. There was wood having to be replaced because it was moldy and it was just not safe for us to work. So yeah, rain's awful. So how does the weather affect budgets and timelines?
Well, first off, for timelines, it affects you when to get to lockup stage. So once you've got shingles on, house sided on the outside, and you're watertight, it's not going to affect your timeline. Or sorry, it shouldn't affect your timeline. I've worked with some trades that if it's too cold, they refuse to work, or if it's raining, they refuse to work, even though they're working inside the house. So prima donnas, there's some of them out there.
Oh yeah.
But that can affect your timeline. Like you get you know, a stint of -30, nothing happens on your house if it's before lockup. So that's going to throw your timelines off. And what's worse is you can't schedule ahead of time because you can't plan on it. You can't say, you know, this weather's going to turn on Monday, so therefore we're going to be good to go for Monday, because then you're gambling on the weatherman, who sometimes is off a little bit on his predictions. So it really messes up your timelines on that, because once you are good to go weather-wise, you need to reschedule everyone. Same thing for rain days. A lot of good trades will work cold weather or work a couple rain days into their schedule. Like they'll say, you know, framing a house, we're looking at it being 2.5 weeks, and they'll budget for a couple days of poor weather that they can't work on. So some trades will work that into their schedule to not mess up the builder. So if they get a couple rain days, it's not throwing out all the trades that have to follow behind them. Same thing for the cold weather. They'll work in a couple days of probably not going to be able to work, and that won't mess up the trades coming down. As for budget, the rain doesn't usually mess up the budget too much, other than if it slows you down for a little bit and you have a little bit of carrying cost. The cold is what can really affect you. If you're heating your basement, you're burning through one of those big tanks. They're around $300 and some to fill. You got a big site that's eating through, you know, one of those every 3 days. That adds up really quickly before you can get your furnace in and your temp heating in.
Yeah.
You're having to thaw out your garage or thaw out your basement before they can do groundwork to pour it. You know, you can burn through a few thousand in heating in a week, and very quickly. So that affects it. Digging, excavators charge more for ripping the frost before they can dig than if you're digging in the summer. Concrete has to have calcium in it if you're pouring in the winter, so that adds a little bit of cost to it. You know, tarping, some concrete guys charge to tarp their concrete. And then one that I found out living on an acreage is ADCO for digging your gas line in. They quoted me, I think it was just under $2,800 to trench the gas into our place, no matter where we had it coming on the line. And it was $2,800 in the winter plus $175 ripping fee, and they figured it would be $175 an hour, and they figured they'd go about 3 feet an hour, and we were 120 feet away from the property line.
Oh my.
So no gas went in that one.
No gas went in then, yeah.
Wasn't willing to spend an extra $8,000 to trench gas in.
Yeah, no, and one thing that I found working in cold and wet is, at least with electrical, you couldn't get as much done because everything is moving slower. People move slower. So there's you know, some timeline stuff that happens with the cold, especially because you know, you're just it's just uncomfortable, right? Especially when you have to have your skin exposed to, work with wiring or something like that. And just people move slower because you have lots of clothing on, very heavy, plus your tools, plus your safety gear, and steel-toed winter boots. They're not easy to move around in.
I forgot as well with sunlights, like our framing crews, when they're working in the winter, they start at 8 because that's when the sun's up, and they're done at 4 because that's when it's dark. And when the summer rolls around, you can start at 7 and you can work till 6 or 7 at night, and it's still daylight. And it actually, as strange as it is, you have more energy at the end of the day working a 7 to 7 framing in the summer than you do working an 8 to 4 in the winter. It takes more energy to stay warm, and you get just so much less production done in the winter.
100%. So what is the longest time you've seen a project delayed because of weather?
I would say probably this winter, actually. That -30 stint that we got in February lasted for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. And that delayed us 2 or 3 weeks to complete a project. We were, as sad as it was, we were 3 days from being completed, and it ended up getting pushed. That's the longest I've seen one go. I've seen projects go longer for a combination of errors, but as for strictly weather, like a weather concern, that's the longest I've ever seen it get delayed on one stage. Because you can factor that through, where this builder was not the most organized builder in the world, so it took them a couple extra weeks to get the foundation in because they couldn't schedule with the cold. They still don't have the house sealed up, and it's springtime now. They should be close to possession, but they still don't have the house watertight yet, and now we're getting into a whole bunch of rain, and that's delaying their trades following. So that house is probably going to be a total of 2 months delayed from strictly weather, and probably 8 months and counting because of poor management.
Yeah, absolutely. That leads me to the next question. So what can a site supervisor or a project manager do to overcome these challenges with weather?
To overcome it with weather for the budget, there's nothing you can do. You just have to work in a contingency plan saying, if we end up running into cold weather and we need to pay for the heat, then we do have it in the budget that is not going to sink us. It's not going to eat out of our profit to the point where it's not worthwhile. If you can avoid doing it in the middle of winter, wait a few months, save yourself a few $1,000s. Organize it so that you're starting in the spring, so that by the time fall hits, you're just doing touch-up work on the inside. As for weather, just keeping an eye on the weather, and the same thing as with everything else in managing a home build, communication with your trades. Hey, I see there's 3 days coming up for weather. How is this going to affect you guys? When are you going to be done? Did you work this in? Just open communication with your trades is paramount to everything. That's what makes a good build, and that's how you schedule everything. That's how you find out if the framer took into account that it might rain. Is he one of those guys that's gonna push through? I know there was a crew that I know that framed through the -30.
Oh, wow.
Straight through. 10-hour days. They had lights at the start, lights at the end. They pushed through. None of their machines would work, so they hand nailed everything, but they pushed through. And the builder knew that, so they were able to meet timelines, whereas most builders would not expect that, and very few framing crews would push through with that. So.
Yeah, no air nailer, no nails being nailed. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Andrew. That has been very informative. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge of building with us. If you liked this, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions or if you have some comments, please leave them below, and we'd love to answer those questions in future videos. Anyways, we'll see you guys next time.